if asked if it was possible to live without relying on thinking, we might wonder whether the person asking it was serious. Thinking, of course, is an essential part of our lives, though we do tend to believe in thinking so much that we give it dictatorial power over us. However, in sitting, we experience that thoughts are merely something occurring in our mind. At the beginning of the Heart Sutra, Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva states something even more radical, with all 5 skandhas are empty, as you know. And the skandhas are the physical and mental processes that Shakyamuni Buddha found connect us to our world. In the first skandha, form, something outside of us makes contact with a sense organ. In the second skandha, sensation, we become aware of that thing. In the third skandha, perception, we add other information in the process of recognizing that thing. And in the fourth, mental formations, we compare it to our memories and already set concepts. In the fifth skandha, consciousness, we have a newly formed understanding of what we have sensed. What the skandhas thus do is make something outside of us into something inside of us. For instance, first, form hits us, as it were. Second, sensation makes a judgment as to whether the thing is good for us, not good for us, or doesn't matter to us. Third, perception adds relevant information to us to add to this initial positive or negative or neutral impression. Fourth, the mental formations check whether the thing works with who we consider we are by matching it with our experiences and ideas, including those concerned with biases, attitudes, and predilections. Fifth, consciousness gives the conclusion reached about how a thing would affect us. Suppose you see a pair of sneakers online. Of course, seeing it is form, the moment you see it. Sensation says that you like them. Perception wonders if they come in your size. Mental formations compare them to the sneakers you already have and whether you can afford them. And consciousness may conclude that the price is right and that you should get them. Through the skandhas, then, we become able to see how something from the world measures up specifically with regards to the needs of ourself. In doing this, the skandhas reinforce our sense of self in determining what each thing from the outside world will do or won't do for us. Buddhism goes even further. Than suggesting that the skandhas function to support the self, and says that we have a self because of the skandhas. They not only intensify this sense of self, but in fact are where it comes from. Uchiyama Roshi put this, we grasp thoughts caused by accident, just as they come into our minds, they're caused by accident, call them I, and attach ourselves to this. We grasp things caused by accident, call them I, and attach ourselves to this. After all, if our having a self is due to thoughts having created it, then we wouldn't have a self without them. After saying all 5 skandhas are empty, Avalokiteshvara adds, and thus relieves all suffering. Their being empty, the skandhas, means that the self is empty, leaving us with nothing to suffer about. Prior to this, in judging what is good for us or bad for us or neither, the skandhas were responsible for the creation of what is traditionally given as the main reasons for why we suffer, the so-called 3 delusions of attraction, aversion, and indifference. With the skandhas not differentiating, however, we have nothing to worry about. And as a result of this, whatever is, is. Whatever is, is. Accepting everything like this doesn't mean that we won't have problems. We should expect to have them every day, Suzuki Roshi said. But if instead of getting anxious about them, we directly face each as it comes up and just work with it, then every day is a good day. With the skandhas established as the problem, the Heart Sutra later goes on to negate all the dharmas that the Buddha taught, from the ones about the 5 senses all the way to the one about the last of the 4 noble truths, the path. In this, the sutra declares our need to go beyond our giving up dependence on discriminating to giving up all the Buddha's teachings as well. This is summed up with no knowledge. And thus, with no thoughts to think about, the sutra then adds no attainment. For when we want to attain something, it is the thinking self doing it. Getting rid of the Dharma may seem disloyal of us, but we are ultimately unable in our practice to rely on anyone or anything else, teachers and teaching included. This point made of giving up all the dharmas, the Heart Sutra continues with the Bodhisattva, quote, the Bodhisattva relies on prajnaparamita, translation, the perfection of prajna, and the mind has no hindrances. San Francisco Zen Center's version has, and thus the mind is no hindrance. Either way, no thinking is going on. And prajna, wisdom beyond wisdom, can appear. With what we differentiate not getting in the way, the right way to say things, to answer people's questions and their doubts, will be there. That's prajna. Such an awareness of what really is comes not from the self, but from life itself. We may call this life Buddha nature, but it has nothing to do with what one person has taught. In the end, when we are not clinging to anything, it is when we are not clinging to anything that we can really be who we are. We experience this when we sit, even if we don't recognize it yet. Oh, thank you. And here's Jane. There we go. Okay. Any comments or suggestions? There you go, Mike. You're trying to hold back there, but I can. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Um, if we do have thoughts and we do have sensations, five skandhas. In your talk, are you stating that the skandhas are empty, but yet they still serve a purpose as long as we don't get attached to them? You know, you see, you don't walk out into traffic. You know, you don't drink something that's hot. You realize that you're getting fired up in a conversation needlessly because it doesn't accomplish anything. So it's more along the lines, I'm just interpreting how I heard your talk, in that we don't want to get attached to the thoughts and the skandhas. They're going to happen, and they do have a useful purpose. It's the fact that we blow that purpose out of proportion and make it, like you say, it takes over our being. Is that along the lines of what you were discussing?
Yes, and you make me remember something that I've talked about before, but didn't add to this talk. And that is there are the five skandhas, right? Form is the first. That's natural. You know, you heard that. Okay. And you thought, oh, he must have hit something. That's perception. But anyway, the sensation of choosing what's good or bad or doesn't matter, or adding information, or lining it up with our conceptions and our prejudices and all of our thoughts and our experience and memories and all of those are what are not differentiated. Now, when that happens, see, we don't have to think, we don't have to, we don't need to know. I mean, when that happens, then form goes directly, without any alteration, to the consciousness. So we directly receive what's outside. And moreover, when we do receive what's outside that way, there's no separation between inside and outside. Then self and other are one. But of
So
course, you are totally correct that of course we need the skandhas, but what Buddhism tries to teach us is there's something beyond thinking. We don't
our
give up
problem is
thinking, but
our
there's
problem is
something beyond.
judgment.
Yeah, well, Buddha nature.
You know, that if we don't judge our perceptions, then we can just receive the data that we need from them to function in this world. But we don't, by judging them, we create the separation. By just
Yes,
allowing them to deal with the current situation, we avoid getting attached to these sensations.
yes, and so there's two sides to repeating now from previous things. There's two sides to us. There's the inside and the outside, but actually it's our world. Our world is outside of us. Okay, and that our world actually extends to infinity. In my world are the stars. In my world are the nebulae. Okay, or everybody else's world as well. Okay, when that happens, form. So therefore, the world is empty, but form and emptiness then become one. Then nirvana and samsara become one. And when that happens, we live without judgment. We of course we always use our minds. We never throw our minds away. Of course, that's But we also know that there's something beyond. Nothing. The beyond is ourselves, however, and we no longer have any attachment, as we read last night in our talk. And the thing, and you were not here, Mike, of course. But anyway, there's no attachment. Yes, Mike. Steve.
Yeah, I just want to say, Peter, and maybe this will get me in trouble, maybe it won't, but that made more sense to me and understanding than almost any talk I've heard. I really appreciate what you had to say, and it really kind of, it's so weird. I hear these things over and over and over and over, and a lot of times I get twisted in the mind, and that there just made perfect sense to me. And I know one of my biggest issues of self is not accepting the world as it is. There's always Steve knows better, those kind of things. And I see where that's something that I really need to work on, as far as that's the perception, the self is delusional. So thank you, Peter. Appreciate it.
Well, I can't add anything to praise of myself. But thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
Okay. How about just your talk?
Matt?
Hi. Yeah, I want to say first ditto to the first part of what Steve was saying. I'd given up years ago on trying to have any intellectual understanding of the skandhas, and figured, okay, I'll get it when I get there experientially. And but that was the best talk I've ever come across, the best presentation, I should say, that I've come across. Thank you. Bravo.
Well, thank you.
And then also I wanted to ask the oneness when the inside world and the outside world become one. Would it be accurate to use the word thusness to describe that?
Actually, yeah, it's thusness is in there because when we come to understand, we come to understand that things are just as they are. That we have language, of course, and we need language very much. Couldn't do without language, certainly. Even my talking right now would not be happening without language. But that said, when we exactly experience things as they are, that's their yes. But there's no humanness attached to them. And then they are just as they are, and so people are the same. So therefore, a Buddha. Let me remind you again that I'm not a Buddha. If you probably didn't need any reminding, but anyway. But so when I'm talking for Buddhas, I'm in big trouble. But anyway, that's called thus come one. And that's suchness. So tataga means suchness. So therefore, the Buddha is suchness, and everything has suchness.
Suchness and thusness are synonyms?
Yes, they are. Yeah, in Buddhism, yes, they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again.
So we can look forward to that.
Yes.
We're not supposed to do that, by the way. Take that off. Cut that out, somebody. Yeah, John?
Thank you, Peter. Yes, great talk. It it made me think of the monk who immolated himself in Vietnam and his ability to apparently completely separate himself from any perception or any processing of the skandhas whatsoever. I mean, at the root of the skandhas is what we talked about before. You know, you don't put your hand on fire, you know, and when you do, you know, oh, the form is the fire, and oh, it's not good for us, it's hot, etc. It would seem that he was able to completely separate himself from the process of using his self to process what was happening to him. He completely, is that what is that kind of what happens there? I mean, has he so separated himself from the skandhas that he has no experience in it?
Please don't put your hand in the fire, even to practice being a Buddha. I don't know, John. I've never heard that before. There are a lot of, very interesting things that people have understood, and that's a whole nother realm for me. But it does seem to have some connection. But I think that most Buddhas would burn, so I would get burned, and so it's not an ordinary thing that Buddhists get or obtain. We do have they actually bodhisattvas also have prajna, but so Buddhists have both, and of course Buddhists have given up everything, and so that they have everything. But I don't know about those abilities. I know people can also, levitate. I'm sure levitation has happened, but it's not a necessary part of the Dharma. No, it may be very, very real. Thank you.
Or the poor witches in the Middle Ages, maybe they learned something
The who?
about witches who were burned at the stake. Maybe they learned something about separating themselves.
It would be nice if that were true,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I'll leave that one there. John, you still have your hand up, or you're that's okay. I just want to make certain.
Not to put it down. I'm sorry, Peter. Thank you.
Anyway, anyone else? Okay, well, let's go. Jane, anything else? Okay, well, then let's have service.